Hello and welcome to this UCAT preparation advice video. So in this video we're going to be talking about the situational judgment section, specifically professionalism questions. So professionalism comes up a lot in this section of the UCAT for obvious reasons, because as you can imagine it is core to being a medical student as well as to being a doctor. This means acting in the way that is expected of you, upholding values such as honesty, integrity, and responsibility to others. And do remember that as a medical student, you're taking a professional degree. So that does mean that you're going to be held to generally much higher standards than other students might be. In this video, we're going to talk through some important things to consider and remember when you're approaching professionalism-based questions, and we're also going to go through an example question together. So let's start off with thinking about key information when it comes to professionalism. So you should be able to spot issues with professionalism pretty immediately through having read up on the duties expected of a doctor. And we actually do have a whole separate guide talking through duties of a doctor if you want to brush up on those. When we're talking about professionalism, that includes areas such as integrity, compassion, altruism, continuous improvement, excellence, and working in partnership with members of the wider healthcare team. And professionalism actually covers more than just how you act with others. It also relates to your knowledge, which is actually very relevant for students, because in order to be professional in that case, you do need to stay up to date with your learning. So professionalism will rely on different codes of practice depending on what stage you're at and where you're practicing, but in general all of it will be pretty similar, and there are certain overarching themes. So these themes are things like being honest to patients, avoiding conflicts of interest, and not endangering patients. And things like this should be immediately obvious in these questions to all future medical students. So let's actually now put everything that we've talked about into practice by going through an example question together. So I've got the question down here in front of me, and I'll also pop it up on the screen here for you to see as well. You're a third-year medical student, and your consultant has come to work smelling of alcohol twice in the last week, and on one occasion they came to work dressed in the same clothes they had on the day before, looking tired and bedraggled. So how appropriate is the following response to this situation? Speak to the consultant before speaking to a senior figure. So in this type of professionalism question, it's not actually your own professionalism that is the immediate issue here, it's someone else's lack of theirs. However, for you to then act professionally, you need to ensure that you're acting properly, and in this case it means taking action. Let's think about what your first concern should be as a professional in the healthcare field, and that's patients. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for an option that addresses the very real risk to patients here. In this case, we have a very senior doctor who actually has ultimate responsibility for the care of these patients. So this is a very, very serious issue. And that means that you also have to take into account how quickly you're going to act. So we're also going to look for options that show that we're willing to work very quickly in order to protect patients. So how you approach this situation depends on the options that you've been presented with. So you might be given the chance to speak to the consultant first, for example, and that would be an appropriate thing to do. However, you do have to understand the severity of the situation, So you do have to report that behaviour if the consultant doesn't do that themselves. So actually the option that we were presented with here, which was speak to the consultant before speaking to a senior figure, is very appropriate because it's empathetic, but it still understands the risk. One of the most important things to remember in these questions is that speaking to others and seeking help is always advisable. So for example, if you found out that one of your fellow students has been selling drugs, then telling them to stop is simply not enough. You do need to report that issue because ultimately you have a responsibility to the public. Okay, so in this video, we've talked through what professionalism entails and what to think about when you're approaching professionalism questions, and we have also gone through an example together. So hopefully you feel ready to tackle these questions on your own.